If I could go back in time and talk to myself before I bought my very first Floyd Rose, I would do a million things very differently. And they would have saved me a lot of frustration. I'm breaking all of that down today, but you're gonna wanna stick around to the end because the most important thing about Floyd's that I wish someone would have told me happens at the end. This is the Axe Guitar Show. Let's go. Welcome back to the Axe Guitar channel, your one-stop shop for tremolo tips and tricks. For those of you that are new, my name is Nick. Today we're talking about everything I wish I knew when I was a young man trying to figure out the Floyd Rose. I wish someone would have told me these things to save me a million minutes, a million hours, days, years of frustration and just got to the point. If you've ever struggled with one or rage quit one or you're thinking about buying your first, this episode really is for you and it's gonna save you a ton of frustration and give you the mindset around dealing with a Floyd Rose floating tremolo. This isn't tech wizard stuff, this isn't any gatekeeping things. This is really just player-to-player experience, and these things really matter once the honeymoon period wears off when you get your first Floyd. Yes, I have my first floating tremolo. That wears off and you're like, how the hell do I deal with this thing? We're gonna save you tons of time, tons of frustration. Let's get into it. And the first point I really wanna get into is that Floyd Rose isn't just a part, it's a system. It's not just a part or a feature or a specification on your guitar. This thing is basically a living, breathing system that requires your attention and research and then a relationship really. The bridge itself matters, the knife edges matter, the posts matter, the strings and the spring claw matters, everything in the back, right? The things that everybody forgets about. The locking nut matters, the tuning matters, and the string gauge matters. This is really important when you're changing the tuning or just the thickness of the strings that you want to get the certain feel. All of this works together in balance. The sum is greater than each of its parts with the Floyd Rose tremolo. So bringing all that back around, when people say that Floyds won't stay in tune, I just have to laugh because it's almost never because the system is flawed. It's usually because one part of the system is out of balance. They don't know about the part of the system that's out of balance and it's not, or the part isn't doing the job correctly. For instance, you might have a flawless Floyd with good knife edges. You got your string tuning exactly how you want it, your string gauges, everything's locked in place, but then your spring and your tremolo claw, you don't know anything about it and the tension's messed up back there. Is the whole Floyd messed up? Not really, just one component that you need to learn about. But if you don't know that going in, all of this feels random and uncontrollable. That's why so many first-time Floyd users think that the whole thing, the whole system is cursed. It's like, oh, nope, don't want to do any more floating tremolos. I just want hardtails. That's a little bit of a flawed mindset. Once you understand that the floating trem is really balancing string tension against spring tension all the way through the entire system, starting at really the headstock with the tuners, coming through the locking nut, making sure the locking nut is secured, going through the bridge and being stable there, and then all the tension underneath and the balance between the fulcrum of the knife edges, the trim, and then the springs in the back. Once you understand all that, you understand there's a lot of areas of susceptibility and vulnerability. If you can address those and learn about them and know about each sequence of events through the whole chain, you'll be good to go and this will become way less frustrating. The next point I really want to get to is that Floyds don't hate tuning, they hate unsettled strings. It's so funny when I hear things about the Floyd Rose because I feel like it's so polarizing. I feel like some people say, oh, the Floyd Rose is one of the most stable systems ever. It will keep your strings in tune for years. And then you see the polar opposite or hear the polar opposite. Wow, Floyd Rose is really one of the most unstable things I've ever used. Use a hardtail. Don't even worry about, well, where is it? I mean, the Floyd Rose is designed to be one of the most stable components on your guitar, allowing you to get those pitch shifts, but then it's like, but then people say it's not? Let's dig into that a little bit. In reality, take all the rumors and all the anecdotal stuff away from it. The properly set up Floyd is incredibly stable. Sometimes it's even more stable than non-locking bridges. I mean, you have strings that are locked down at two different points, and if everything's working great, it's gonna be stable forever. Because let's think about it. Even with hardtails, you might have stability at the bridge, but what if the tuners aren't good or the gear ratio of those tuners aren't good and those keep coming The Floyd Rose wins that 9 times out of 10. Bringing it back to floating trems or the Floyd Rose, they do not tolerate sloppy string installation. With a normal guitar, or should I say hardtail guitar, you usually just throw strings on, tune it, play it for a bit. You'll have to retune several times to get that perfect, but eventually you reach like a state of equilibrium where the strings are stretched, they're ready to be used, and they mainly stay in tune if you have good tuners up top. The Floyd Rose does not work like that. In contrast to a hardtail, in a Floyd Rose, when you throw strings on, they will stretch, and they always do. But the thing is, what makes this different from a hardtail is when the strings stretch and get a little bit more lax, that affects the actual level or the tension of the bridge. So thus, the tuning becomes extremely frustrating. But this isn't all bad. Anytime the bridge moves in a different position than how you set it up, it will cause a pitch shift or a tuning change. And slightly get it out of tune. If you don't understand that interaction, it feels like this guitar is constantly fighting you. And that's one of the most frustrating things for new Floyd Rose users. What I wish I knew early on is that the solution isn't magic, it's patience. If you really want the benefits of a Floyd Rose, like being able to use a whammy bar, doing squeals like Dimebag, you are gonna have to learn some patience. Rub the temples. And with this patience comes very important attention to detail on very small techniques on setting up your bridge right. So, I mean, when you put the strings on, they need to be fully stretched, or at least stretched a little bit, and settled before locking your locking nut up top, okay? That means tuning, stretching, tuning again, repeating until the bridge stops drifting, or at least is where you want it to be, which should be level and flush with the guitar body, depending on how your neck is installed or how high the pickups. If you have a recessed or just a non-recessed trem, those things are very important. But it also means starting with your fine tuners. Those are the fine tuners that are on the back of the tremolo on the top. Usually they're sticking up on a Floyd Rose. That means keeping the fine tuners somewhere in the middle, not too depressed and not too up, so you have room to fine tune once you lock the trem. This is all small details that once you get them down, the Floyd Rose becomes amazing. I have to be honest with you, most horror stories start with locking the nut too early, or even starting tuning with your fine tuners maxed out or fully depressed. I hear it all the time. In reality, at that point, you're not fighting the Floyd Rose, you're fighting your own setup process. So a little education, a little patience, and some attention to the fine details will save you tons of time and tons of frustration. I promise you that. All right, guys, just a quick break to thank the sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. Most New Year's resolutions fail by about February, and I think it's because people try to become a whole new different person overnight. What's actually helped me is way smaller than that. I've dedicated a little bit of time each day to learning music theory. I'm definitely not a maestro, but I've been getting a little bit better every day, and that consistency adds up. Therapy works the same way. It's not a quick fix. It's a steady habit that helps you understand your patterns, grow over time, and build real support for your well-being. I like BetterHelp because getting started is simple. You fill out a questionnaire, get matched with a therapist in as little as a couple days, and can switch at any time if it's not the right fit. If you've been thinking about therapy this year, head to betterhelp.com/theaxeguitar for 10% off your first month. I will put the link in the description below. All right, back to the show. So the next point I want to get to is that you probably don't have the things you need to maintain or set up a Floyd Rose correctly. I mean, string changes aren't hard, they're just unfamiliar. Let's get you up to speed. I used to think restringing or setting up a Floyd Rose was some advanced level guitar technique, and it's not. I have this story when I had my first Floyd, and it was an E standard tuning, and I wanted to get it to D standard so I could play every Children of Bodom song ever. I had no idea how to change that from E standard to D. I had no clue. I was like, I know, can you just tune it down? Well, I tried tuning it down, and the bridge just goes flat. So I'm like, what? How do I even do? There's strings, I have to adjust the string. You're telling me I have to unscrew bolts in the back of the recessed cavity that's in the wood? Ooh, that sounds scary. So guess what I did? I took it to Guitar Center and paid about, I think, $50 to $100 to get it set up. Is a restringing and retuning of a Floyd Rose worth that much? Let us know in the comments, veterans. The answer is no. Making those big changes, such as changing the tuning, the string gauges, or even just restringing the thing or putting strings on and setting it up in the first place, it just feels intimidating at first, doesn't it? That's because you're learning a new workflow while dealing with a bridge that reacts to every change in tension. And then if you're coming from a hardtail, you haven't had to undo the screws or loosen or tighten the screws that go directly into the wood of your guitar. Scary, I got it, but let's get you set up for success. The first few string changes or tuning changes feel slow. Everything's unfamiliar. The bridge moves, the tuning shifts. It feels like you're doing something wrong, even when you're not, because half the battle is going out there, figuring it out, screwing up a little bit and learning from your mistakes. That all of this movement and the things in this learning curve is normal. It's really just physics and balance of tension. You really cannot damage your guitar that much. Maybe. But what makes a setup, string change, tuning change easier on a Floyd Rose is consistency, doing it right, but also having the right tools. Let's make sure you have the right tools to start. This will save you a ton of time and frustration if you just have the right tools. And let's start with this bad boy right here. This is the trem block from Shredneck, okay? And what this does is it sits behind the trem when you're trying to change your strings to keep it level, okay? Many players use like a simple block or wedge during the string changes. That keeps the bridge in a neutral position while the tension is changing, like loosening the strings at the headstock to make them loose to take them off and change the strings or the tuning, right? That's not cheating. It's removing variables while you learn, and this is the best thing for it. Sure, you can use a sticky note pad or something, or a piece of wood. I've even seen 9-volt batteries, but this thing's the best because it's small, compact. You slide it right under the fine tuners, the saddle screws, and then bam, you have a level trim, or at least a trim that will not move when you're changing it or setting it up. Lastly, how are you going to unlock the strings safely? How are you going to lock them in appropriately? You really need a tool like this. This is the Shredneck trim tool. And what this is this has 2 different hex keys on it. One for like the locking nut and the saddle screws. And then this one's for the saddle retaining screws, those small ones that you need to change when you update the intonation of the Floyd Rose. And that's a whole different conversation. But this thing will save you tons of time. 1, you don't have to find the right Allen key to fit your whole Floyd Rose. And 2, this is compact, can go on the back of your headstock, so it's always there when you do a string change or a string pops out and you need to do a quick change. This thing has saved me so many times, so go check it out. The last thing is a string stretcher. Check that out. That might be a little gimmicky to you, but this thing's actually been pretty awesome. When you put new strings on a Floyd Rose, you have to wait for them to stretch. You'll lock down your bridge, and as you play, they start to stretch, and your bridge will actually go down a little bit because the strings are slacking. You can kind of save yourself some time if you stretch the strings immediately once you put it on. Put all your strings on, tune it, stretch it. It'll go out of tune a little bit, keep stretching, and then once you get a good stretch, lock it down, and you'll be in tune for a long time. So for all these tools, I'll put the links in the description. Go ahead and click them, check them out. They've saved me tons of time and frustration. So getting right back to the topic, the real mistake is rushing the process and not having the right tools. I know you're excited to get in there and mess with your Floyd Rose, or you're scared of it. Either way, having a consistent process and the right tools is really going to help you out. You gotta be prepared before you rush into something. Once you learn your workflow through reps and using the right tools and where these tools fit into your workflow, and accept that, Floyd Rose, they reward patience. Once you get all that knocked out, string changes stop being stressful. They become predictable. And then once something's predictable, after doing it many times, it is not scary anymore. Trust me, I change strings all the time. All right, moving on to the next big point. I think they were at number 4 now, but your first Floyd experience lives or dies by hardware quality. Hot take? Let's get into it. This is an uncomfortable truth, and it might ruffle some feathers. A lot of people's hatred for Floyd Rose comes from cheap hardware, because there's some cheap Floyd Rose mechanisms out there. Softer metals cause problems, like zinc alloy. Worn knife edges cause problems. Inconsistent clamping causes problems. Poorly mounted nuts or loose nuts cause problems. All of these can sabotage tuning stability before you even touch a screwdriver. Remember, if one thing's wrong, it's a system. Basically, I guess you could say the weakest link, right? Picture this, and I know you've heard it before. When a beginner buys a low-cost guitar with a questionable double locking trim like a Floyd Rose Special or a cheap licensed trim, and it doesn't behave, they don't blame the specific hardware or the guitar. They blame the entire concept of having a floating tremolo. Go on any Reddit thread. You know, I used to have a trem and it just gave me so many fits because I bought a Floyd Rose special and it didn't cooperate, and so I'm done for life for floating trem. Are you kidding me? But in all honesty, I kind of get it and understand because they have no reference point for what a good system actually is or feels like. Quality doesn't mean that you have the most expensive, best trim on the market. I don't expect you to go out there and buy the $700, $800, $900 titanium hand tug trim and then be like, okay, now I finally get floating trim. That's not what I'm saying. But it does mean paying attention to reputation, materials, and tolerances. There's different levels to the Floyd Rose trim systems. There's the Floyd Rose specials or by Floyd Rose trims, which are zinc alloy made of weaker metals but are cheaper. There's Floyd Rose 1000 series, which is hardened steel but made in Korea. And then there's the original Floyd Rose, which is all hardened steel and fine components. Those different levels come with different qualities and price tags. Each one have their, I think, unique place in the guitar community. But, you know, you pay attention to those things and what they're made of. Floyd Rose now puts the quality, the QC and the materials on the website, so take a look. And then if you're wondering the differences between all of these trims, I did a very in-depth video about the levels of different Floyd Rose. I'll put a card up here and a link in the description. It is a masterclass on how to differentiate between several different Floyd Roses. See you over there. The moral of the story is that a solid unit with good knife edges and a properly mounted nut makes learning dramatically easier, and cheap hardware turns learning into damage control. Cheaper trims are great for entry beginners if they can tolerate it. I think it's a great thing to get a Floyd Rose special if you're new to really get on board with the whole floating tremolo system. But if the cheap materials keep breaking down and they cause you frustration, it's time to upgrade and pay attention to those nuances. Bottom line, if your first experience feels like you're constantly fighting with the guitar, it's worth asking whether the system itself is capable of being stable in the first place. Let's just say it out loud. All right, guys, and we've made it to the final point. This is the most important thing. I wish someone would have told me back when I was a green, Floyd Rose user to save me so much time and frustration. I really wish that they would have just told me this. And what it is Floyd Rose problems really aren't Floyd Rose problems. They're expectation problems. When your expectations don't match reality, that's where you get frustration. You expected one thing, got some other outcome. You're not gonna be happy. Again, it boils down to once you start treating it like a system, commit to tuning, and respect the setup process, everything clicks on top of the umbrella of consistency and reps. Floyd Rose systems aren't hard, they're honest. They have a way to set them up correctly and then provide good longevity for tuning stability and actually longevity for guitars over time. They've proven it decades and decades in the past. Floyd Rose trims aren't hard, they're honest. They have a certain way to be set up to be optimal. Once you learn how to do that, they have phenomenal tuning stability over time, and then they've shown durability and utility for decades. And once you understand them, they stop being intimidating and start being empowering. Like, think about it. You finally figured out how to set up and maintain a Floyd Rose to where it's easy, piece of cake. You've just unlocked the tonal optimization and ranges and flexibility of a Floyd Rose. You went from one thing and exponentially unlocked all these other tools, sounds, pitches, everything. Now, I want to hear from you. What was the most frustrating part of your Floyd Rose experience growing into the floating tremolo world? Did you figure it out? Or did you swear it off completely? I want to hear your stories below. Let us know in the comments what Floyd Rose you have, your particular story, any bloopers like you may have had like me, let us know. Now I'll put all the links for the tools in the description below, and then all the videos we talked about too during this video, more links down there. But also, if you like the content, go ahead and hit subscribe below so you don't miss any Floyd Rose tips and tricks and things that get you on the right track for your Floyd Rose or floating tremolo. Also, if you're listening on audio only, go ahead and give us a positive rating on any platform that you use to keep this show going. I really appreciate it. And with that, y'all, I'll see you at the next video, next show, next time. Bye-bye.